everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat about what we're doing. You all probably know better than many all of the projects that we have underway. You are feeling them as you drive around downtown or don't drive around downtown if you're trying to avoid the Crosby Street closure. We are certainly in a building phase right now. And I think a lot of the projects that we're tackling are ones that have been kind of perennial sticking points for the college for the last little bit. So I would love to spend tonight walking you through at kind of a high level, what is our overall strategy, what are the things that we're working on campus, and give you a little bit of detail about some of the individual projects that we have underway or are just about to get going on. So zooming way out, we have 3 primary areas of work that we're doing on campus. The first is our energy transition. This is focused on our reduction of scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions. We have a 60% reduction goal by 2030, a 100% reduction goal by 2050. And that's really about how do we improve our efficiency, build resilience, and really contribute to the climate change crisis. The second category, and this is probably one that you're seeing most visually, is our housing work. When President Bylock was named president, she was named president about 9 months before she started. If any of you have got a sense of Sion, she likes to move quickly. And so I started getting calls from Sion even before she started. It was about 6 months before she started, and she had spent the last 3 months listening to people. And she said, everyone is telling me that housing is a problem. I don't want to wait until I get there. Come to New York, let's figure out a strategy. So I just took a couple of trips to New York, and on her inauguration, we were ready to commit to 1,000 new beds by 2033. So I'll talk a little bit about where we're tracking on some of those, but I think this is one of the key enablers that we've heard as we've listened to the community. Part of what makes Dartmouth special are the students, the faculty, the staff. It's our ability to bring together really outstanding people in this environment. If we don't have housing for those people, we can't do that. We're really missing an opportunity. So housing is really foundational to so much of what we're doing. And then finally is our renewal and upgrades program. So we have, as many of you know, a campus, we have buildings that are over 100 years old. Those need tending to. We also, every year, have new faculty joining us that are doing new types of research. And we have to always be thinking about how are we retrofitting some of our old buildings to support the work of our new faculty. So these are our 3 big categories of work. Across all of these, the energy transition is just about $500 million of investment. Housing is now over $500 million of investment. We've been able to raise about $110 million towards housing from generous alums. And then renewal and upgrades, that, when you look at it over a 5-year period, is about another $500,000. So all told, it's about $1.5 billion worth of work.
So $500 million on the last one.
Yeah. So it's about 500 million, $500 million on each of them. I'm rounding a little bit, but it's generally 1.5 billion over the course of 5 years, which really reflects 2 things. One is the work we are doing to catch up, particularly on our energy transition. We didn't have a do-nothing scenario, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Many parts of our system were over 100 years old and need to be replaced. We just thought we're going to replace it, but replace it with something that's also better for the environment. So let's dig into a few of these areas. I want to start with energy and how we are thinking about this. So I mentioned the greenhouse gas goals that we've set. We, right now, where we are, since 2010, have reduced our greenhouse gases by just under 30%. Our goal is by 2030 to get to the 60% reduction. So we have a little bit of work to do. I think we're going to get pretty close. Our biggest challenge right now is how much construction we can actually do to hit that goal. We know what we want to do, we have the dollars to do it, and it's how quickly can we put the pipes in the ground and build the facilities that we need. But we know what we want to do. We actually know what we would need to do to get to an 80% reduction right now. We've done some studies, we understand the exact assets that we would want to put in place. What we don't know is that last 20%. We are not sure how we will get to a full 100% reduction. And I think that's one of the reasons that I feel really lucky to be trying to solve this at a place like Dartmouth. I don't have to do this on my own. We have some incredible faculty across the institution in engineering, in arts and sciences, that are actually doing work to help come up with the inventions, with the solutions that will help us get there. And so as we think about this, I really drive the kind of construction and operations piece, but there's a big portion of this that's really working with our faculty and our students to think about what is the innovation that's going to help us solve that last 20%. And so one of the things that we launched over the last couple of years is this thing called the Climate Collaborative, where we're actually inviting faculty and students to come into the construction projects and use that as a living lab. So giving them access to the data that our professional engineers are doing, and they can bring that into the work that they're researching. So it's been a really exciting partnership opportunity between the operational teams and our faculty to think about how we solve some of the hardest problems on our campus, but also how do those then relate more broadly. Okay, so I said we had a do-nothing scenario. And what I meant by that was we really have a current system that is aging and inefficient. So even if we didn't have greenhouse gas goals, which are incredibly important, but even if we didn't have those, we would need to be doing something on our energy system right now. So what this graphic shows us is the current system that we have in place. Many of you know we have a centralized steam heating plant. Most of our buildings don't have boilers or furnaces in their basement. All of our buildings, or most of our buildings, are connected via district pipes to the central heating plant. And so that plant, we get 3.7 million gallons of number 6 fuel oil every year on average. That supply number 6 fuel oil is not some of the best stuff. And so it's been our goal to really reduce the amount of number 6 that we use on campus. From there, the steam plant essentially uses that fossil fuel to heat up water and turn it into steam. That process, we lose 28% of the embodied energy in it. There's just lack of efficiency in that process of turning the hot water using fossil fuel into steam. We then have to pipe it all the way around campus. With the heat loss in the pipes, we lose another 15% of the embedded energy. And then we finally make it to the buildings, and because our buildings, many of them are old and leaky, we lose another 5%. So from the initial kind of BTUs that are delivered in that truck to getting to the final point of heating, we're losing 48% of the potential energy. Part of that is that we have some incredibly old assets. There are 4 boilers in the heating plant. The oldest boiler is from 1966. Now my texts in the boiler texts in the plant actually say that this is one of the easier ones to take care of. It's less finicky than the one from 2008. But nonetheless, it is aging and is getting to the end of its useful life. We also have 26,000 feet of steam piping, and about a third of that is over 50 years old. And once the piping hits 50 years old, it starts to degrade. That's when, if you are ever walking around campus and you see steam coming out of something, it means that a pipe has failed, and that we need to go in and tackle it. So 75% of our buildings are on steam, and so we have more work to do to get them ready for where we're going next. I'll also note that 65% of our buildings lack air conditioning, which, as our climate is shifting, particularly in kind of the shoulder seasons of the fall and spring and then our summer term, it's getting harder to really use our spaces effectively without air conditioning.
Should we ask questions at the end, or should we go?
Yeah, if you want to jump in, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, on the 48% on the previous slide,
Yep.
Part of that is not energy loss, part of that's electricity, right?
Not in this model. This model is specifically talking about the loss, basically the BTUs in that delivered oil, and what percent of that embodied energy we're losing along the way. This is just looking at the steam heating system. Oh, you're talking about cogen.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, part of that is electricity. I don't know how that's accounted for in this number. That's a good question. But it's a fair question. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one thing that now nearly 40 years ago when I was a student, we had the heat in the rooms was either on or off. It was sort of like, it was binary. And in the middle of the winter, you'd be amazed at the number of windows that were open to try to get, you know, something habitable. I've driven through town in just the last couple of years, and I've still seen a lot of windows open. So I think that there might be some improvements there if, you know, just investment in controls and better ways to optimize, you know, thermostats in each room and get better control on the heating.
Yeah, 100%. And some of that is just the limitations of the steam system.
Yeah.
And at what level
sure.
can we actually implement those controls? But you're right. I mean, in many of our buildings, it's still on or off. Even in Parker's, for my offices, the heat comes on for the first 15 minutes of the hour, and that's it.
There was that main knob to turn it on and off, and then there was a numbered knob that was supposed to be temperature control. It never did anything.
Yeah, some of those don't do as much as they purport to do.
So you said 75% of the campus buildings are on steam heat. How do they heat the other 25%?
That is a great question. And that's going to lead us right to where we are. I didn't plant you either. That's just natural happening. So, turning to where we head, and some of this is work that's already been done. We're not starting from scratch. But we have 4 key strategies that we look at as we're transitioning our energy system. The first is to reduce our energy demand. This is energy efficiency. Wherever we can reduce the amount of energy that we need in any given building, it just makes it that much easier to solve our problems down the line, right? If we're able to reduce it by 20%, that's 20% less that we need to solve for. So we think that this is probably the safest and smartest first investment that we can make. And so a lot of effort has been put into making our buildings more efficient, whether it's how we use electricity, but even more importantly, thinking about the envelopes and how we insulate our buildings. The second piece, and this goes to your question, is a transition from steam to hot water. That seems like a pretty small little thing. It doesn't seem particularly innovative, but it's a huge shift for us. So the steam system is a pressurized system that requires a really intense form of heating to create steam. And so it really limits us on what we can do. As we go to hot water, one, is more efficient, and 2, it allows us to be more flexible in how we actually generate the heat for our buildings. So the 25% of our buildings, this has been something that's been on our horizon. So as we've been doing renovations, and as we've been building new buildings over the last decade, we've been trying to transition to hot water, which is just a more efficient way to heat your buildings. The third piece is carbon-free heat sources. So this is moving away from burning fossil fuel in our central plant. And then part of what happens when you move to carbon-free heat sources, a lot of those sources now require electricity. And so we need to make sure that we're getting our electricity from zero carbon sources.
So, last I heard, with this whole transition, you were, like, for example, you want to switch to heat pumps, which you maybe did 2 minutes later. Which all changes from, it requires electricity.
Yep.
And where's the electricity coming from? Last I heard was that it was going to come from the New England grid. Is there some change in that front?
No, so
New England grid's 65% gas.
Yeah, so
Ideally.
right now, we're going to do this in phases. So we have been looking for projects that we can tap into that would allow us to have more zero carbon electricity in the mix. You're right now if we just rely on the grid, it doesn't get us there. And so we're looking at, are there additional projects that we can tap into, either a mechanism called virtual PPAs, which would be kind of in the overall grid network, or could we actually do something behind the meter? Could could we do a larger scale solar or something like that that would help us? We don't have the zero carbon piece fully figured out on the electric front. It's an area that we need to continue to push on.
I think the dams on the Connecticut and Deerfield River sold maybe 8 or 10 years ago
Yeah.
for 150 million.
I don't know the number, but I know that they shifted hands, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously that's a lot of zero carbon electricity. Probably more than we need times 10 maybe. Anybody look at buying those?
We've looked at a lot of things, including that, and that dam needed to be re-permitted, which was not a process that we were feeling that we were particularly well suited to run. So, thinking about where we are in this process, focusing on what's happening on Crosby Street, which we know is one of the areas that has certainly been a pinch point. So these are from, not that picture. Most of these pictures I'm going to show you, we've been doing once a month drone video captures to try and help us monitor how everything's going on campus. So these are from our February 2nd drone flight. And the work that has mostly been happening so far has really been focused on energy efficiency and our hot water. So the work that's happening in Crosby Street is essentially laying the distribution piping that allows us to transition off of steam onto hot water. And you can see the level of complexity. You know, these are the pipes that are going into the vaults that are going to live underneath Crosby Street. One of the things we're also doing, we're not just replacing the steam with hot water, we are also adding a chilled water system. And part of the reason that we're doing that is that heat pumps, many of you probably have them in your homes where they provide you both air conditioning and heating. Heat pumps actually work on both ends of it, and they work well when you're doing both. And so it's an opportunity for us to actually add air conditioning to a lot of the places on campus. So that's the work that has been underway so far. Where we're going, the next phase of this work is to start thinking about how are we producing our heating and chilled water. And so the kind of red and greenish blue lines here, these are our distribution systems. We've been getting our buildings ready by preparing them to convert to hot water. And now what we're starting to think about is what is the production. The current thinking is to install geo-exchange wells. So this is drilling closed-loop systems 500 to 800 feet into the ground, piping into those closed-loop systems essentially the water that is connected to commercial-scale heat pumps. And it basically uses the ambient temperature of the ground, which in our area sits around 55 degrees, and using that as a battery to store the energy, whether it's cooling in the summer or whether it's heating in the winter, or a little bit of both on the shoulder seasons. Some of you may have heard about plans that we're advancing for us to start doing drilling. Turns out that part of what you need to do here to do traditional drilling, you have to remove about 6 feet of topsoil. And to remove 6 feet of topsoil for over 500 wells, that's a lot of dump trucks running through downtown. So we put a pause on that and went to the drawing board and said, okay, maybe we need to sequence this differently. We definitely can't do this when Crosby Street is closed. As we were looking at it, something came up, a new generation or a next generation of drilling technology that basically uses directional drilling. So rather than having to clear off the entire 6 feet of an entire field, you have to only clear off a smaller area where you can set up your drill rig, and then the drill rig underground kind of spreads out rather than having to go down the whole field. So that's what we're looking at right now. Our hope is that we can, that will be the next phase of what we implement. But we're really trying to be thoughtful about how do we do this in a way that doesn't disrupt campus. One of the things that we weigh all the time, Dartmouth exists on a 100-year plus time frame. And so some of these decisions, when you're thinking about it in 100 years, feels easy. It's like, yeah, this is going to save us millions, it's going to save greenhouse gases. But we also think about the student experience. We have students that are here for 4 years. And so if we have a project that is 2 years, that's half of their experience. And so we really try and balance how much disruption we can do at once. I'll be honest, I think we're close to that tipping point, and I don't think we can do a whole lot more. And so it means we have to think about sequencing. When do we do the next project? We have to wait for something to be done before we act more.
Josh,
Go for it.
what's the geography of that? How close must the drilling be to campus?
Yeah.
Does it have to be in Hanover? Could it be in Norwich? No, what would the name of town look like? I don't
Who's
know.
from Norwich?
Well, there are a lot of fields. There are a lot of fields north and south of here.
So there is essentially a efficiency penalty you pay the further away that it is. And so we have a little bit of leeway, but you couldn't, for example, run it across the river. That'd be too far. So we're looking at somewhere that is either on campus or kind of within the immediate periphery of campus.
And once the drilling is let's look to the future. Once the drilling and everything is complete, you can use the surface area for almost anything.
You would never know it was there.
Do you look
Yeah.
along the golf course as a place to do this?
We could. The golf course is a little bit far away right now. It's all possible. It's just a question of, because the longer the pipe is, you lose energy during the distribution piece. So you add construction costs because you have more piping you have to do, and then you've lost energy because you have to go. Any questions on energy? I'm going to move to housing next, but any questions on energy?
Well, I just wonder, where are you thinking of doing this?
So
You're around it.
we are thinking about places that are already green places. So we're thinking about fields, we're thinking about the green. We're thinking about places where we would not, the only thing you can't do, once you install these, unless you have prepared for the exact building that's going to go on there, you can't put a building over it. So we're looking for places that we think would probably remain green for a very long time. The green is a possibility. It is one of the ones we're studying for sure. Yeah.
How many acres do you need? How about doing that?
We could. It depends. It depends what phasing. So part of our whole strategy for this is not a do it once and flip a switch. Our goal, so as I said, we have 4 boilers in the central plant. Our goal is for to take one boiler off at a time. Because if we were to take all of the boilers off at once, I think we would need something like 3,000 boreholes. We're not going to do that all at once. We're looking at what can we do with 300 to 500 boreholes. I think the green is in that range. It's somewhere between 300 and 500 that you could fit in a bore field there.
That's 5 acres.
Yeah.
I'm unclear, is this driven by oil or is it driven by electricity? How did I miss that?
Nope, that's a great question. This part of the system, so the switching to the heat pump, is driven by solar or some electrical source.
Okay.
Yeah, wouldn't be just solar because we need to use it at night, but some kind of electric source.
What's the percentage of solar?
Right, so we haven't figured out what we're going to do going forward. Right now, we have solar on a number of our buildings. We get about 3% of our electricity from the solar we have on campus. We are looking at a ton of different projects, including wind projects. But to the earlier question, we have not figured out this supply piece of it.
So to go back to the dam question, you don't necessarily need to own the dams, but you could enter into a PPA with the dam owners.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm more in favor of that model than actually being the owner of the dam.
Sure.
Yeah.
It feels different. It's dry heat. So any considerations into what constantly in the buildings?
Yeah, it's a really good, so there's a simplicity to steam. It's a pressurized system. It kind of goes out to your point. It generally comes with a little bit more humidity. The switch to hot water, it's not pressurized, so it means we need more pumps around campus. And it does mean that in certain facilities, depending on the requirements, we may have to add humidification. And so that's part of, we have something called a high performance building standard. As we think about moving to buildings that are, have really high efficiency, that are super well insulated, it introduces a whole other set of things you need to think about. One of the things I think is really interesting, a lot of our buildings right now, people have said, why don't you just add insulation? Some of our buildings structurally would not allow us to do that because the building actually is designed to have heat escape off through the roof, melt the snow, so that the building doesn't have to support the weight of the snow. If we were to go in and insulate it, we would create a structural problem because the snow would sit there. And so it creates layers of things that we need to solve for.
And with brick buildings, don't you need a certain amount of heat passing through the brick, otherwise the mortar fails?
Yes. So Dartmouth Hall is a great example of this.
Wow.
When we were doing the Dartmouth Hall renovation, we wanted to improve the efficiency. Most brick has moisture in it. In a very similar concept, the mortar and the bricks actually require some heat. Otherwise, that moisture becomes a problem and you create cracking and structural issues. So we had to test our brick and mortar to see what the water content was in there, and then that guided us in terms of how much extra insulation we could put on. So we were able to add about 2 inches of insulation onto Dartmouth Hall. It would have been great to make that 5 inches, but that would have been too much. And so we landed on about 2 inches there. So it is a little bit more efficient, but not as efficient as we build. Before I turn to housing, it will be different radiators in different types of buildings. So some will be kind of balance units that are more passive. Others will have actual fan coils. It depends on the space available and the capacity that's needed. It really will vary depending on the building type. Okay. So let's move to housing. I want to start with Sugarwood Circle. It sounds like some people already heard about this. We actually had a ribbon cutting ceremony this morning. This is a 21-unit development. It's just kind of across the street from the Campaign Rink and the Sachem Village. This is faculty staff rental housing. It's the first housing for faculty and staff that Dartmouth has developed in almost 20 years. And these are mostly 3-bed, 3.5 bath units that are really geared towards the type of housing that our faculty and staff need. Every year I hear about people that we were trying to recruit that we can't get to come because we didn't have housing that they needed. And so I joke, I'm not a huge sports fan, but I have a couple people on my team who are, and they always say, we think of this as a single. 21 units, we probably need hundreds, but we got to start somewhere. So this might not be a home run, but this is getting us on the first base and setting us on our way. So we were really excited. The first 8 units are ready. These are homes that are prefab from Huntington Homes in Vermont. The first 8 units are ready now. The remaining units will be available this summer, and we already have wait lists for it. So we know there's demand for it, and we're starting to look at what is our next project that we can do to add to it, because we know that housing is a really critical piece. So this is part of the faculty staff housing piece that contributes to Sion's goal of 1,000 beds. The other big play are,
Are those market rate rents, or do you guys subsidize the rents?
These are market-based rents.
Okay.
Yeah. We have, in total, Dartmouth has, with the over 500 units that we manage, and for the most part, they are market rate. Some of them are much older, and those older ones are the more affordable ones that we offer.
Josh,
Yeah.
and just because everybody I think is very interested in what it costs, we're all in our own places, for a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath place to live. What would you consider that right now that these are going for?
Yeah, so
Or the rental?
the monthly rental on this, which includes services like trash and
Yeah.
plowing,
Okay.
some of your utilities, not all of them, is $4,400 a month.
Well, it can't be that. anywhere around here.
It is market. I would point out that for solidly a third of our employees, market is out of reach. And so we know that we need to do more.
But it's also on, it's on a bus line, it's walking distance to town, it's all, it meets all your criteria. It's really important also schools.
Yeah.
Long watching.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mile, but it's on both Advanced Transit and the Dartmouth Campus Connector shuttle. It's on that route. We are really excited about these. I think that any housing is a net add to us. I think what we're really thinking about is that this product doesn't solve all of our problems, and so we're not stopping here. We're thinking about what else we can do. One of the things that we think about is there some place we could do a slightly larger project? And the scale allows you to sometimes fit in some affordable housing units. You can have a little bit more mix in it. So as we're looking for our next project, that's one of the things we're thinking
You guys
about.
looking at Rivercrest?
Say that?
Rivercrest?
Yeah, I would love to do something at Rivercrest. There's some TCE contamination from next to Krell, which is solvable, but it costs more money. And so there's been a dollar barrier there to actually figuring out how to make that work. But it is possible, for sure. And there are ways to work around it. It adds to the cost. So, faculty staff housing. Now let's turn to undergrad housing. And when we think about undergrad housing, we think about this in two categories. The first are renewing and updating our current housing stock. Many of our buildings have not been touched in decades, and the current housing needs to be brought up to speed. And so in phase one, which is the project that's underway right now, we were totally gut renovating the Fairweather Hall. Part of that renovation also gets it ready to put onto our new heating system, so we add cooling, we make it a really energy efficient building. The other piece that was part of phase one is Russo Hall. This is well on its way. This will be ready for this coming fall for students to move into. 285 net new beds. This is part of our overall plan to bring more of our students to live back on campus. We have regularly had somewhere between 85 to 87% of our students living on campus. And when I say on campus, I also include our green housing. We would like to be more in the 90 to 95% range. We think one of the defining characteristics of the Dartmouth experience is being on campus, being walkable to a lot of those amenities. We also know that if our students aren't living in our on-campus housing, it means they're out in the community living in other places. And those are taking up units that grad students or staff or faculty could also be using. So our goal is to bring more of our students on campus to be up over that 90% mark. And Russo Hall will help us to do that. So that's phase one. And if you haven't been up to fairs, one of the things that we're looking at, in addition to kind of renovating the kind of traditional buildings, we're also adding some more programming space to support our house communities, to create some of the spaces for the type of academic and co-curricular programming that our house professors and others in that community would like to do. So this, the February 3rd update, you can see this is tracking along quite well. This space right here is that kind of grand hall, which will be a key kind of programming and living room space for the housing community.
Just for scale, you said 285 at Russo. How many beds are in Fairweather versus, say, New Hampshire, Topliff, just so we can kind of...
Oh, you're testing me. I think we're like 260-ish.
Okay, so Russo is roughly the size of...
Before the renovation, after the renovation?
We gained, by doing some of this infill, we gained about 30 beds.
Okay.
Your previous chart showed little red lines slicing through the wigwam dormitories and the
River cluster.
You know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about these?
Yes.
River cluster.
And the other ones next to it, they used to be the tree houses for a while, and they tore those down and put in some brick buildings that were there.
Yeah, so Maxwell Chin and Cox, which are these buildings right here, these are a slightly different vintage from these. We are planning to keep these around for a while. They are already apartment style living, so they match well with the other buildings we're doing on West Wheelock. I should mention Russo Hall is all apartment style, which means that it's typically 4 bedrooms. They all share a living room, a full kitchen, 2 baths. So this is kind of going to become our apartment neighborhood, primarily for juniors and seniors. So these ones we think we're going to keep for quite a while. French and Judge are next up. I don't have it fully solved, but we think it's about time for them to come down.
What is the meaning of the green versus red versus the red striped area? Does that color coding indicate anything?
Just that we are, the green captures green space, meaning that we are thinking about this as landscape opportunity. The orange are the parcels that we are developing with either that we own and have a plan for. You can see if we have a plan for it, that will show that we have actual buildings there. These are ones that we own but don't necessarily have redevelopment.
And that last orange one that's the 2 former gray apartment buildings that you guys bought and there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is 37
Just
to 43.
to figure out where we are on the map.
Are those traffic circles, the 3 overs?
No, those are not traffic circles. There are a few folks who think there should be traffic circles. No, we're really thinking about this as what are the kind of arrival moments. And so, I think there's an important arrival moment when you come across the bridge. There's another arrival moment when you're at Thayer Drive, kind of going up into the west end. And then, of course, our kind of traditional arrival moment when you get to the green. And this is really, when we work with our design teams, our landscape architects, we want to be really thoughtful about each of these moments. And so we just call them out. We call them gateways. And so we're really being thoughtful about how those are going to look and feel.
And to the left of Russo, west of Russo, there's 1989, Shonda Rhimes and the Alumni Hall, right?
Yeah.
In that order?
Let me look at these and then we can go into depth on all of those. So this is Fairs, coming right along. Just as a reminder of what used to be a 25 West Wheelock. And this is what's going to go there. We're going from about 30 beds to 285 beds. And this is now, a lot has happened since February 3rd. They've finished up the masonry work, so some of that is off. But you can get a sense of how it's all coming together. So, phase 2. So both of these projects, Fairs and Russo, are on track to open for this coming fall. So they'll be done over the summer.
Josh, just when you have the traffic thing there isn't any time between about 3 and 6 o'clock when Wheelock Street all the way up to Norwich and all the way down past Park Street is completely gridlocked.
Yeah.
So how are you putting that into your computer when you're doing, I know you 280 things and so forth, because they tell them they can't have cars?
Yeah, so the students are not going to be parking on West Wheelock.
Nobody can park.
Nobody can park, but there's not parking associated with these buildings. The students will be able to park at A lot, and there will be shuttling, but we're not adding any cars to this mix. We are right now working with the town of Hanover to figure out what we need to do with the sidewalk, to probably enlarge it, add a shared use path, and probably have some tree buffer. But we don't own the road, that's the town of Hanover, so we're having conversations with the town right
Can you
now.
put the cables underground?
We're looking at that too, yeah, for sure. And then phase 2, and this is kind of where we're headed. So these set of buildings, the way that we think about these, it's 2 buildings, and each building has 2 halls. We create the halls to kind of create sub-communities within the buildings. So the class of 1989 named both of the halls in this building, and then Shonda Rhimes named the first hall here, and then this one all the way to the west is Alumni Hall. These are the ones that if you've been up and down West Wheelock, they've started to do the site work. And these are going to be ready for fall of 2028. So this is the bird's eye view. You can see Russo Hall here. This is engineering and computer science. You know, one of the things that Dartmouth has never had a campus architectural standard. You go to some campuses, Duke is the one that stands out in my mind. You know, Duke literally has an approved stone that you can use. We've never had that, and so our mandate is to build in context. And so you can kind of see Russo was really kind of built in context of engineering and computer science. As we were doing these next set of buildings, 89, Rhines, Alumni, we weren't sure that the river cluster was the right set of buildings to try and mimic. So we kind of jumped over and we're looking at some of the kind of Tuck and Thayer buildings to think about the context that they're in. But what you can see here is, you know, kind of the bridge is right down here, kind of up West Wheelock, Class of 89 building, Rhines Hall, and Alumni Hall. Well, you'll never see this particular vantage point, so let me take us down kind of into the pedestrian view. So this is coming right across the bridge. This is Alumni Hall, and you can see there's some really amazing space kind of under the eaves here that I'll show you a little bit more. There's also a patio here that's going to be off of a multi-purpose space. And then not shown here, but one of the things we're working on is to add a Dartmouth sign that would be placed right about here. That would be a granite sign that says Dartmouth to really welcome you to the Dartmouth campus. We've never had a sign like that before. So we're pretty excited about that development as well. So this is the treehouse reading room that we're talking about. This is the space under the eaves, really designed to be just a cool hangout space. We've been playing with whether or not we could set this up to, you know, have catered events or, you know, a bar or something. So still working on that, but pretty cool views that you'll have out over the hills and the river.
Hey Josh.
Yeah.
I have coming from someone in my family that is on the waterfront a lot with the crew. Will there be any kind of preferential housing for the rowing team to be close to the river? Like,
I don't oversee the housing lottery.
Just gonna ask.
Yeah, the current housing lottery system is going to apply to these. The biggest shift that we're not ready to make yet because we don't have all the housing, but the way that we think about house communities is shifting to, you know, we want, particularly in your first and second year, we want you to be close to the green. We want you kind of place-based. As you get into your junior and senior year, a little bit more flexible. You maybe don't, you know, maybe you want to live in an apartment with friends that are from multiple houses. So that's the biggest change that these apartment type units are going to allow us to do. These are really geared to our juniors and seniors that want more independent living, a little bit more flexibility. So it's not going to be just a replica of living in kind of traditional dorm. It'll be Dartmouth housing, but it's going to be apartments.
But they're not going to essentially be part of a house.
These buildings are not going to be assigned to a house. The apartments, everyone will maintain their house affiliation,
Right.
but these apartments are not going to be affiliated with a specific house.
When it was decided not to build undergraduate housing on the north end of the golf course,
Yeah.
I heard several rumors about eventually moving Tuck School out there. And then using what's the current Tuck School campus for undergraduate housing, dining, academics, and so forth. Clearly, that's a long-term project, but is there talk about that? Are you discussing that at this stage?
There's talk about so many things. Yeah, yes, people have talked about that. I will say right now, there is nothing in the works to make that a reality. We have looked at, in a generic way, what could be developed on the golf course. The reality is that to move anything of that scale, you're talking about at least $1 billion. And so right now, no line of sight on that, unless any of you have classmates that are really interested in something. So yeah, I mean, I think we do lots of planning studies, and we do a master planning process where we're constantly thinking about how we use our land. That is a scenario we've studied. I'm not seeing any pathway to get there right now.
Well, in Tuck now, with Magnus in there and Tuck teaching undergraduate classes, they're much more integrated and, good cooperation with Thayer and different degrees.
Yeah.
That would split a lot of things.
It would be a big move. It would have a lot of interconnected pieces that I don't think we're ready to tackle yet.
May I just make a comment? It's
Please.
not a question. I think especially for female graduates like me, the fact that driving from Vermont and seeing Alumni Hall and Shonda Rhimes Hall is really, really meaningful.
It's
Really,
really exciting.
meaningful.
It's
Now I'm
awesome.
going to start tearing up.
It has been absolutely one of the best parts of my job over the last year to work with all these donors.
And we have to do the development office. I hell of a lot of credit.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job.
And female graduates, a hell of a lot. I'll just share this story about Alumni Hall. When they started this, they thought it was going to take months to rally the number of people that they needed. I think the time between our calls was like 12 days. And between calls, they had oversubscribed. It was pretty amazing. It's really awesome. So it's been an outstanding success. And because they actually exceeded their goal, part of what we were doing as part of the Alumni Hall project is also to really improve the riverfront landscaping. And we'll create some pathways while still making sure that rowing and Ledyard have all of the features that they need, but really trying to make that a moment of arrival for Hanover and for the campus.
So one arrival point of going across the river from Norwich that is kind of ugly. So right now, looking at these beautiful renditions, of course they don't have the overhead wires. Is there any plan to bury those electric wires, which really...
Yeah.
They don't...
That is part of our conversation with the town right now. We would love to have those buried. The utility companies can be challenging to work with. But we are trying really hard to get those buried, because I 100% agree. I think, as we've been working with the town staff, we feel really strongly that making this something that is pedestrian safe, bike safe, but also just to bring in some vegetation, some landscaping. I mean, there's a real moment to turn this into a real welcoming experience as you come across the bridge. Yeah, sure. All right, so that's Alumni Hall. We're going to keep going up. This is Shonda Rhimes Hall. You can see a little bit, we're building into a hill. And so the exit, the north side exit, so the other side of this building, is actually on the 5th floor. And so one of the nice things that allows us to do is we can actually use the elevators in the building to help with accessibility. And so it's about a 50-foot grade change, which from West Wheelock up to kind of the plateau of the west end. And so because the exit for this building on the back side is on the 5th floor, we can use the interior elevators to help with some accessibility routes for folks. So that's Shonda Rhimes Hall. And then we go up to the class of 1989.
So in order to build that, you have to demo that white house that's there now as
Yeah.
construction headquarters.
Yeah.
Is that going soon?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, no, just driving up today, it's totally,
Is the house gone? I don't think the house is gone. I think
I was
it's
just overwhelmed with all the rubble.
Yeah, all the trees. Yeah, it's moving quickly. It's moving very quickly. All right. That's what I have for you tonight.
In the various housing phases that you mentioned, there was no mention of the choke doors.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend. What's being planned there?
So we're in phase 2 right now, trying to get that construction running. we do think one step ahead. We try and think a few steps ahead, but one step ahead for sure. French and Judge are up next, and that's a replacement, not a renovation. I don't know what's beyond that. Choate's is on the list. I will say from a pure facilities condition, the Choates are not the worst buildings that we have.
Really?
Aesthetically, they are their own special little thing. But in terms of the actual maintenance that we need to do, those buildings are stable. Some of our older buildings, I'm thinking of Lord Street or Guile, there are some buildings that have some infrastructure issues, and so it's a balancing act to figure out how we put those all together. But it is on our list, for sure.
Well, at Choates is a reno or is it demolition?
I don't know. That's a good question. My guess would be that it's a demolition, but we've not studied this enough to know for sure. Yeah.
How many beds, I may have missed this, but how many beds from 89 Shonda and,
Yeah. Alumni. Across the whole cluster here, that's an additional 400 beds.
400? So that's 700-ish that you're adding,
Yeah.
plus
So
what you've added from the fairway. So
yeah.
you get
Plus
close.
so as of 2028, we will be well over 700. I think we'll be mid 700s of net new beds. So that gives me another 5 or 6 years to get to the 1,000 that Leon has charged me to get to.
And then south of Wheelock, across from Rousseau, or maybe up the hill a little bit, there are a couple lots that are cleared right now using parking, and there are houses there. Those are planned for.
So we've been, as I was saying, we try and think a few steps ahead, but we're really focused on what we need to build right now. Okay. There are, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
A couple of these buildings needed to be torn down.
Right.
They were not livable, so the ones that need to be torn down have come down. They're going to be used as construction staging.
Right.
We don't currently have plans for this site yet. We will put something there. I will say we think about the south side of the street in a very different way than the north side of the street. The north side of the street, in our minds, is now campus. It's part of the Dartmouth campus. We're thinking about how we connect it all together. The south side of the street, we think as a transitional zone between campus and the neighborhood. And so I would suspect that whatever we do on the south side of the street would be less dense, not as tall, would be more thinking about how do we transition from these buildings on the north side of the street to the neighborhood that kind of sits there.
But might it still be student or staff?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we don't love the idea of having students cross the street. Not to say we don't trust our undergrads, but they make some different decisions. So right now, we don't know. I think we've been leaning towards grad students or faculty staff, but we're not fully there yet.
After you're done with the federals, I heard that the next project on currently existing buildings is going to be Mass Row. Is that still on the drawing board?
Yeah, so French and Judge and Mass Row are going to be done at the same time. I should have mentioned that. I forgot about the Mass Row. Yeah, they're being done at the same time.
And when you redo Mass Row, will you be adding beds there?
Probably not. So this is really interesting. I think to kind of the casual observer, Fairs and Mass look very similar. They actually have the geometry of them is pretty different. Mass Row does not provide the same opportunities to add beds as the Fairs. We will do some connectors. That's more about accessibility to make sure that the elevators can get to every floor. But in the Mass Row situation, the connectors are going to be much lighter touch. It just doesn't work as well. You actually, because of the depth of the floor plates, you do the infill, but then you lose beds, and it kind of the math doesn't work on it.
And what is the timeline for Mass Row?
So we are currently in the early planning and feasibility for Mass Row and French Judge. So that construction could start within 18 to 24 months, probably. Yeah.
I see you read hash marks over Fairbanks Hall too, is that for a reason?
That is so there's Fairbanks and then there's also parking there. The Fairbanks as a building needs some love and attention. And so similar to some of these other buildings, this map comes from our master plan, and so part of it is we identify which buildings, when it's time, are we going to renovate versus which ones will we use as a site for something new. So this is a potential site for us to do some redevelopment.
So Josh, we're bringing students back to campus that are not currently there. Is there a need for more dining facilities? Or is FOCO and the others sufficient for that?
Yeah. For now, we are okay. There are two things that we're looking at. One, there will be a cafe added into the class of 1989 hall. So there'll be a little bit of added capacity there. All of these buildings on West Wheelock are apartment style, so they'll come with kitchens. So we think that the students that live there are not going to use the dining hall at quite the same rate. And to be honest, most of our off-campus students already have dining plans. So we're not actually increasing it by that much. But we are riding the line, for sure. Particularly during peak hours. Tuesdays and Thursdays during peak hours, there can be a line at FOCO that can be frustrating. But we're not quite at the point where we need to do
Increase the size of the undergraduate body by any significant amount.
Increase or decrease?
I would increase, yes. I
increase.
assume they're not going to decrease.
Yeah, that would be
There
what
are
you're saying.
definitely conversations happening about what is the right scale going forward. A lot of our peers have announced that they're growing. Dartmouth is already the smallest Ivy. And so I think there's likely something that we're going to need to do, but we need to go through a whole process to figure out what that looks like. I will say that when this was last studied, I think back in 2017, 2018, the biggest thing that came out of that report was you don't have the housing to even start to think about growing. And so I do think as we figured out how to tackle some of these housing problems, I think that allows us to start having the conversation.
I saw in the Dartmouth blurb online today that you have a new title.
They added strategic initiatives.
Does that mean it's a new job or is it just a longer title?
I had a mentor once who said the reward for the pie eating contest is more pie. So I have a little bit more pie, but my team is mostly the same. I'm working on a few additional things that I was already working on, and they've recognized.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
If I can go back to an energy question for a moment.
Sure.
You've described how with evaluating energy consumption, you're looking at both first order effects of direct consumption and second and third order effects. I'm curious how that is, how the campus partnership with Anthropic measured, plays into those types of evaluations at a big scale.
Yeah, so I would think of AI, of course, as an incredible user of energy. Anthropic would fit into what we call scope 3 emissions, which are those emissions that we cause but are not directly in control of. The other things that fit into scope 3 are things like airline travel for students coming to campus. In general, not just for Anthropic, but more broadly, we don't have a good grasp on our scope 3 emissions. One of the initiatives that we're launching is to start to just wrap our minds around, can we catalog our scope 3 emissions? And so there are a number of models out there to start thinking about how do you quantify them. So that's something we're working on right now, and I think we'll see that the use of AI is a real impact that we're going to have to think about on the scope 3 front for sure.
Thank you, Josh, very much.